Hey there, Pastor Marc here. It's our prayer that this message would encourage and equip you in your relationship with Jesus. We're able to provide this content due to the joyful generosity of our financial partners. And if you'd be willing to join that tribe and help get some sermons like this around the world, you can donate at harvestbaptist.info/give. God bless.
Happy December 1st to all of the Scrooges out there who refuse to celebrate Christmas until Thanksgiving is over. There's a group of us who have been celebrating with the angels since November 1st or 2nd, and we want to say, come on in, the water's fine, all right? We have been drinking our hot chocolate and listening to our Christmas music. We've had our lights up. We put our lights up when it was 60 degrees out, and it felt amazing, and you put your lights out when it was bone cold this weekend. So I'm not saying, nana nana boo boo or anything. I'm just saying there's a way to do this and a way not to do this, and celebrating early would be my recommendation. I'm just saying. Next year, I may even start a Christmas sermon series November 1st. You just have to wait and see what happens. But it's been good. And welcome to the party. We're all now on the same page. We're all celebrating Christmas together. We do a Christmas sermon series today, and I think that we could all agree, whether you celebrate Christmas starting November 1st, I am a time change guy, so that normally is the first week of November, but as soon as the time changes, that's when I start my Christmas celebration. And or maybe you're later on. I think we can all agree that Christmas lights are pretty amazing. How many of you, can I hear a cheer if you like Christmas lights? Christmas lights are fantastic. I love Christmas lights, I really do. I think there is a $1 million question to answer though, and that is, this is an age-old question, like why are we here, stuff like that. White lights or colored lights, okay? We need to settle this debate today. I'll tell you after your vote right now what the early service said, but we need to settle this. We're gonna settle this in a very empirical, scientific way by length and volume of cheer. That's how we're gonna settle it, okay? So we're gonna start with the colored lights, then we're gonna go to the white lights. If you are team colored lights, I wanna hear on the count of 3, I wanna hear your cheer if you're team colored lights, all right? 1, 2, 3. Pretty good, pretty good. If you're team white lights, let me hear you on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. First service had colored lights. This service, the white lights took it. So I don't know if it's because you had your coffee and you're alert or what it is. So I guess the jury's hung here. But lights, right? And whether you're colored lights or white lights, if you're like me, you're like, I don't really care. I just love Christmas lights. Why is it that we love Christmas lights? I think there's a lot of reasons. It could be that there's some nostalgia, that it starts to conjure up memories of my childhood and Christmas and maybe putting lights on the tree with mom and dad. We had a tradition growing up that we decorated the tree together. It wasn't mostly decorated, then we did a little bit. We did it together while Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas music was on cassette. It was a cassette player that played Chipmunks Christmas, and that was for years, and we love putting lights on the tree. But why do we love these lights? Happiness, nostalgia, they're beautiful. Yes, yes, and yes, but I think maybe one of the reasons, if not the primary reason that we love them, is because they come at such an opportune time. They come out when it's the darkest. This is why I personally like to start my Christmas celebration and get my lights up as soon as time change happens, because it gets dark and even just dreary, a little bit depressing. Some of you know what it's like as soon as we fall back, that you go to work when it's dark and you get off work and it's dark, and that's not fun, right? But then this time of year, there are millions upon millions of these little bitty lights that start to pop out, and they start to make everything light and bright and happy. And Christmas lights wouldn't be the same if they were in the summer. The fact that they happen in December, so close to the winter solstice, when it's the darkest, that is part of what makes them so special. And what you find in the scriptures is that Jesus is described to us as the Christmas light, but not just the Christmas light, but light that comes to darkness. Over and over again, if you read John, if you read Matthew, if you read the prophet Isaiah, you find Christmas described in terms of light breaking into darkness. And I want you to see one of those as we begin this little series called Christmas Lights. I want you to see one of these from Matthew. Matthew chapter number 4. This is the start of Jesus' ministry according to Matthew. Jesus has just been baptized. He has been tempted in the wilderness, and now he goes to begin public ministry. And this is what Matthew says in Matthew 4, verse number 12. He says, "Now, when Jesus had heard that John," speaking of John the Baptist, "was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee. And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the seacoast, in the borders of Zebulun and of Naphtali." Why would he do this? Well, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet. And here's what Isaiah the prophet said. "The land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people which sat in darkness saw a great light. And to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up." So here Matthew reaches back some 700 odd years to the prophet Isaiah and said, Isaiah said these words in Isaiah 8 and 9, and Jesus has come as a fulfillment of those words. When Isaiah said that there were people in darkness and a great light came to them. When Isaiah said that these people sat in the shadow of the valley of death, but a light has sprung up, he was speaking of the Messiah. He was speaking of Jesus. And he specifically actually alludes to this region. He quotes in verse 15 of Matthew 4, the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, by way of the sea, beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. These are all descriptors of the same area. In the same way that we would have kind of our modern vernacular during election season to say the swing states really are important, or the Rust Belt is going to matter, or Michigan and Pennsylvania. These are all descriptors of the same area. Zebulun and Naphtali, you could almost think of as state borders inside of the nation of Israel, up above Jordan, at the Sea of Galilee. What is he referring to? He's referring to the north. He's referring to where Jesus grew up in Nazareth and then where he started ministry up around the Sea of Galilee. He's referring to Podunkville. Yeah, in the south, that's where everything happened. That's where Jerusalem was. That's where the temple was. That's where the holidays and the festivities and everything happened in the south. Up there, that's the sticks. There was even a phrase, can anything good come out of Nazareth? What's coming out of the backwoods? Who's going to come out? What information, what technology, what person, what prophet? Who's going to come from up there? And Isaiah said 700 years prior, somebody's coming from up there. And that somebody is going to be a light for darkness. That somebody is going to be a Christmas light. And Matthew says that was Jesus. Now that's a beautiful little vignette to look at and to see, oh man, there was this prophecy that Jesus would be a Christmas light. But I wrestled with, throughout the course of the last 2 weeks, what does he mean by darkness? And what does he mean by light? Is he referring to darkness literally and saying, well, it gets real dark, that time of year, and they just have candles and they need some electricity and some light bulbs? Is he referring to this poetically? Yeah, probably. But what do we mean? It's beautiful to say Jesus is light for darkness, Jesus is a Christmas light, but can you be more specific? Can you tell me what the darkness would comprise and what makes it dark? And can you tell me what the light would do and what the light would actually bring? Like in words that are applicable to my life, and words that would make a difference for me or help me see what Jesus could do for someone. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. You just got to go back to Isaiah. Isaiah describes for us what the darkness is, and he describes for us what this light will do in grave detail. And what you'll find is that the darkness that possessed these people some almost 3,000 years ago removed from us, the same thing that possessed them, there was political darkness and there was emotional darkness and spiritual darkness and even an existential darkness that had them, that we haven't changed all that much, and it's the same darkness that we wrestle with today. And Jesus is able to do for us what he was able to do for them. And I want you to see that. So if you would, humor me and go back to Isaiah chapter number 8. This is the prophecy. Matthew just quoted it in a very compressed, terse way, but this is the expansion of the prophecy that is so beautiful and so relevant that it's almost scary. Here it is in Matthew chapter number 8, and he begins to tell you why it's dark. And first of all, he says there's a political layer to the darkness, that there was a ton of political fear-mongering happening. He says in chapter 8 of Isaiah, verse number 11, "The Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand, and he instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people." God came to me and said, there's a way that the people are walking, there's a path that they're taking, and I don't want you to walk down that path. I don't want you to go that way. I do not want you to do what is commonplace for the average citizen. Well, what is it that's commonplace for all these people that I should avoid? Here it is, verse 12, next verse. "Say ye not a confederacy to all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy. Neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid." You say, well, what in the world does that mean? Well, you need a brief history lesson to understand it. Isaiah is coming in a time period of about 700 BC, where the nation of Israel has broken into two pieces, north and south. Isaiah is a prophet in the south. There is King Ahaz. To the north, they are their enemies, and the north has made a political alliance, a confederacy, with who would normally be an enemy. They have now become a friend. The north has actually started an alliance with Syria. And when they do this, the people in the south are getting really scared. And they're saying, what in the world is happening? How are we going to defend ourselves? It would have been hard to fight the north on our own, but now they have another country with them. They're going to have more accoutrements for war. They're going to have more weaponry. They're going to have more soldiers. What should we do? I know. Maybe we should start a confederacy. Maybe we should go get a partner. And so they do. King Ahaz begins to talk with the king of Assyria, and this person who would have naturally been their enemy. Nineveh was where Jonah went to prophesy. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria. They were very fierce, ferocious people. And maybe we should make an alliance with them. If they're bringing a friend to the fight, we should bring a friend to the fight. And what's happening is, number one, the political landscape is shifting all over the place, and it is causing a ton of consternation in the people. The people are now scared. What is happening? Why is it happening? What should we do? If the sky wasn't falling yesterday, the sky is definitely falling today. What does this mean for our future? What does this mean for our grandchildren? And there's all of this fear-mongering taking place regarding the politics of the day. Now, it shouldn't take me very long to kind of press into you how this would maybe possibly apply to our lives. I know that this may have been slightly more appropriate 6 or 8 weeks ago, before the election was over and done with, but don't we live through this every 4 years? Where they're not just political pundits or political conjecture or people that are paying attention to the political landscape or talking about the issues of our day. There is a boatload of fear-mongering that takes place. Politicians aren't dumb. And they know that they need to press your desire button of what you really want or your fear button. And more often than not, they press your fear button. And you begin to hear every 4 years, this is the most significant election our nation has ever faced. Every 4 years, it's the most significant, every time, right? The future of our children and our grandchildren hang in the balance in this election. Freedom itself is at stake. Democracy is at risk. You hear all these exaggerated hyperbole, just really fear-laden and fear-ridden statements to possess the political landscape that is our day. Am I saying that our politics don't matter, or that our elections don't matter, or that it has no bearing on our life? I'm not saying that at all. Don't mishear me. What I am saying, though, is that it's not new for people to look at the political landscape, fear the shifts that are happening, feel and sense the shifts that are happening, and then to be ridden with fear because of it. That is as old as Isaiah. And he says this is producing in people a darkness that they do not need. And Isaiah, I want you to tell them to go a different way. Well, which way would I go? What am I supposed to do? The ads are everywhere. They're on my phone, and they're on my YouTube channel, and they're on my radio, and they're in the newspaper, and I can't escape it. What am I supposed to do? Well, here's what he says to do, verse 13. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself. Let him be your fear. Let him be your dread. Sanctify God. You want to set something apart? You want to put something over here and give it a lot of mental bandwidth? You want to spend a lot of time being concerned? You want to spend a lot of time being worried? Why don't you worry about God? Why don't you care what he thinks? Why don't you take all that attention that you're putting on Trump or Harris or JD or whoever? Why don't you take all that attention and put it to God? See what that'll do for you. You want to be concerned about something? What is he saying? He's saying you're trying to connect all the dots. You're trying to race your mental motors. You're trying to do all of this, figuring out what's going to happen and what does this mean, and if the domino falls, and if they have control of the House or they have control of the Senate, and what this means for us, and you're trying to do all this projecting. Why don't you spend all that time and just put your energy on God? Maybe that'll work better for you. He's describing people who have become so not just paying attention to or being concerned citizens, but people who are literally taking their hopes and their fears and placing them on the backs of politicians, and it is not producing light in their life. It is producing darkness in their life. And he says, don't go that way. Migrate your hope and even your fears back to God and put them on him. He says not only was there political darkness, but there was also a spiritual darkness that began to possess them. If you fast forward down to verse number 19, he describes it. And he describes this rising fascination with occult practices. He says, when they shall say unto you, here's their advice, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, the necromancers, the people who can talk to the dead on your behalf, and unto the wizards, to them that peep and mutter. Go to the spiritists. That's their advice. Go to the sorcery. Go to the paranormal activity. Go to the horoscopes. Go to the Ouija boards. Go to all of these occult practices. Go to them and look for advice. Look for solutions. Look for guidance. Look for what you should do. Ask your dead relative what they would say and have some medium tell you. Go to the tarot cards. Go to the psychic. Get a reading. Go do that. That will give you some direction. That'll give you some help. That'll tell you how you need to guide your life. You say, okay, well, that was, I don't know, those were primitive people. Thousands of years ago. We wouldn't do that. Oh, would we? In our secular, growing atheistic day and age, there is still, and I think there always will be, a fascination with the supernatural. And when you no longer have this fascination with the supernatural that you can push to God, where do you push it? You push it to the occult. Think I'm joking? I pulled up last night on Netflix. I said, I just want to see what's there. Netflix has these little headings, right? Continue watching, top 10, this week, those sorts of things. But then 3 or 4 down, there's a heading that is critically acclaimed, exciting TV drama. And last night, I took the top 10. I looked at the top 10. Here are 6 of the top 10 critically acclaimed, exciting TV drama, according to Netflix. And you tell me if we have a fascination with the occult or not. The Witcher, 3 seasons of magic and monsters. Travelers, time traveler arrives in the body of a serial killer. AMC's A Discovery of Witches. Vikings, you can learn how Ragnar Lothbrok and Loki harnessed their pagan ways, looked to the old gods, and they conquered the Englishmen. And eventually they find themselves in Valhalla. Stranger Things. Lucifer. I didn't know there was a Lucifer show. In this supernatural crime series, the devil helps an LA detective solve murders. Those are 6 of the top 10. That's not from Isaiah's day. That's not from Jesus' day. That's right now. Don't kid yourself if you don't think that people are trying to find some sort of answer or scratch some sort of supernatural itch, and they're not looking to occultic ways and are trying to figure out answers in some way that's beyond themselves, but are finding themselves trapped in a bunch of witchcraft and sorcery and nonsense. There was a spiritual darkness that had possessed the people. You say, well, what were they supposed to do? Well, he once again tells you in the next verse, or actually at the end of that verse, he says, should not a people seek unto their God? Why are you spending all your time and your money on a tarot card reading? Why are you going to the psychic? Why are you calling the hotline? What are you doing? Should you not seek God for the living to the dead? You're going to try to talk to a dead person's spirit about the living and try to get advice on that? No way. Verse number 20, to the law and to the testimony. It's almost like Batman telling Robin, to the Batcave, It's go back to God's word. Go back to the law. Go back to the testimony. Go back to God. Why'd you leave him in the first place? You're so concerned about all the politicians that you've taken your eyes off of God. You're so now looking for supernatural this and that and paranormal activity that your eyes are off of God. Put your eyes on God. Go back to his word. That's what you need to do. But there was a darkness that had begun to possess these people. He says at the end of verse number 20, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. You are dark because they are dark. The blind are leading the blind. This will not work. It never has worked. It's not going to work. It's going to produce darkness inside of you. And what you find is all of this political and all of this spiritual darkness leads to a bit of emotional darkness. If you look in the next verse, in verse number 21, it says, they shall pass through it, hardly bestead and hungry. That's a way of saying you're going to get through it and you're going to survive, but you're not going to be unscathed. You are going to be lacking and you're going to be hurting at the end of it. It shall come to pass when they shall be hungry that you are going to fret. They're going to fret themselves. They're going to curse their king, and they're going to curse their God and look upward. This is going to produce in people, I regret what I have done. I fret myself. I don't like the choices I have made. I don't like how I feel. I don't like where I am. They're going to look at their politicians who they loaded all their hopes on, and they're going to curse their kings, and they're going to say, I don't like me. I don't like my political leaders. And they're even going to look up at God and shake their fist and say, I don't like God either. And that doesn't describe a growing population of our country. I don't know what does. People who are just pent up, there's this general angst and frustration and anger that possesses them, and they look in and they're frustrated, and they look out and they're frustrated, and they look up and they're frustrated, and they're just frustrated. I don't know. There's like this low-grade anger that I could fight at a drop of a hat, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, even try to walk on eggshells around them, and they're just going to be punchy, they're going to be angry, they're going to be hostile. Why? Because they're pent up and they're frustrated. And they're just angst. Some of you, it's like, that's not them, that's me. Yeah, I know exactly how they feel. Well, Sherlock, solve the riddle. You just spent 4 months loading all your hopes and dreams and fears into whatever political party or whatever political figure, being so concerned, even if the election went the way you wanted it to, you were so concerned and worked up. You're uptight, surprise. And you spent more time watching Stranger Things than you did reading your Bible. And wouldn't you know it, you don't feel good. You feel frustrated and angry and mad at them, and mad at you, and mad at everybody, and mad at God. These are these people. These are not just these people in Isaiah's day. These are us. And he says all of this political and spiritual and emotional darkness ultimately manifests itself in a bit of like existential, experiential darkness. Next verse, verse 22. They shall look unto the earth, and what will they find? Trouble and darkness and dimness of anguish, and they shall be driven to darkness. That little phrase, they shall look to the earth, commentators debate on what it means, but the majority of them, and I agree with them, seem to think that it means they look to themselves. That there is this disappointed self-reliance. That they look to humanity to say, solve the problems. They look to the politicians to solve the problems. They look to technology to solve the problems. They look to medicine to solve the problems. They look to the financial markets to solve the problems. They look to their friend or their mama or their grandma or their counselor to solve their problems. They look to somebody. There's got to be a solution out there. There's got to be somebody that can help me. And if they can't help me, I'll help myself. I'll pull myself up by my own bootstraps. I'll figure it out. I'll work the problem. I'll solve the problem. It'll get better. And he says, in all of this humanity looking to humanity to solve the problem, what does it do? It spirals them more out of control. Darkness and dimness and trouble and anguish, and they will be driven into deeper darkness. What is he saying? He is saying we look around and we see children picking up guns and shooting other children in our schools, and we're like, well, that's a problem. Well, yeah. And then we try to solve the problem, and wouldn't you know it, it seems like more children are picking up more guns to shoot more children in more schools. And it seems like the problem only got worse, concerned as we may be about it. He's saying that we, as a country, would declare war on drugs in the 70s. With all of our military, all of our power, all of our might, we're going to wage war on drugs. And you fast forward 50 years, how'd that go? That work out? Nope. I know, technology will do it. We'll have social media. That'll give us the true news, and we won't have to get it from someone else. We'll actually get the real news from real people, and that will give us clarity. I know we'll have technology. It'll make us more efficient and better. We're going to have a 4-hour workday, or maybe it's just going to be work in your pocket, and you're going to have a 24-hour workday. People that are sincere, people that are trying, people that are legitimately wanting to fix problems and make things better, but wouldn't you know it, try as we may, we're not more connected with our little smartphone, we're more distracted with our little smartphone. And now all of a sudden, we didn't fix anything, we just made it worse. We've created new problems, we've exacerbated, we've been driven deeper into darkness, even though we're trying to fix the problems. It reminds me of the British back in the early 1800s, and some of you may be familiar with this because it's such a comical story. But they took over in India, specifically in New Delhi, and the British people were not used to the snakes that kind of ran rampant in that area, and they decided that they would have a cobra eradication program where they were going to pay the Indian people to bring them dead snakes so they could get rid of all the cobras. So they did. It worked like a charm. The Indian people were like, we can make some serious money with this. So they went snake hunting. And they started chopping them up and bringing them in, and they were making money until some entrepreneurs got a hold of the idea and said, hey, instead of capturing the snakes and killing them, why don't we capture them and breed them? Then we'll have more little money makers at our disposal, and we'll just keep bringing those. So all this little cottage industry of snake farming popped up all over India. And by the time the British figured out what was going on, it was too late. They stopped the program immediately, and now the farmers, the snake farmers, had all these snakes that they couldn't get any money for anymore, so they just turned them back loose into the wild. And the end of the program, there were twice as many cobras in India as there was at the start of the program. Intentions were good, plans seemed solid, but it didn't work out. It was worse than when they started. Is not that the story of many countries, many cultures, many families even? Intentions are solid. They're well-intentioned. The plan seems like it makes sense, but fast forward 5 years, you're more frustrated in your marriage. The parenting did not go as planned. And things just seem darker than they were in the first place. You say, Pastor, this is the most depressing Christmas sermon I've ever heard in my life. Wait, it's going to get better, okay? But you got to describe the darkness. When he says a light by the name of Jesus is coming for darkness, what does he mean for darkness? He means he's going to save these people from all that angst and all that frustration and putting all their hopes and fears into those political figures. He's going to save these people from the spiritual darkness and never finding true answers. He's going to save them from this disappointed self-reliance. There's going to be a different way. This darkness it can be dispelled. You can get rid of this, but it is this dark. It's this rough, it really is. And he goes on to describe what this light will do. And it's beautiful. It's utterly beautiful. He says in verse number 2 that the light is going to bring some joy. He says, the people that walked in darkness, well, all of a sudden they saw a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them has light shined. And I love, oh my word, I love the realism of this. The message of Jesus at Christmas, the message of Christmas lights, is not things are kind of bad, but we'll get it together and we'll solve the problem ourselves. If we just try a little harder and really put our brains together, we'll figure it out. That's not the message. It says it ain't gonna work. But it's also not this dystopian, you're doomed for despair, it can never get better, there is no hope. That's not the message either. The message is things are this bad and you will not solve it yourself, but there's a different solution outside of yourself. There is light coming to darkness. What do you mean light coming to darkness? Verse number 3, thou, this light that's come for the darkness, has multiplied the nation, not increased the joy. They joy before thee according to the joy in harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. That is to say, this light is not going to just increase or add to the joy. This light is going to multiply the joy. It's going to be joy, like joy in a great harvest, or joy when you're dividing the spoils of war. You say, well, I'm not a farmer and I never went to war and got any spoils. Okay, just take it at this. It's great joy. The message is this light is not just an addition or somehow just a little boost for joy. This is a joy multiplier, and there's so much joy. All of the fear, all of the angst, all of the disappointed self-reliance, that stuff can be replaced by joy. And not only joy, it's going to bring joy, but also diminish burdens. Verse number 4, thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. He is saying joy is coming and burdens are rolling off. We are looking forward to, with this light, somehow, some way, that oppression will run away from us, that it will flee from us, and joy will be produced inside of us. It's as in the day of Midian. You say, what do you mean in the day of Midian? Well, it explains it in the next verse. Admittedly, it's a bit tangled up, and you got to untangle it, but it's so beautiful. He says, every battle of the warrior, it's confused with noise, and garments are rolled in blood. But this, it shall be with burning and fuel of fire. He is expanding on the idea of the day of Midian. So once again, one final history lesson. Midian was Gideon. And the Midianites came to fight the children of Israel. Gideon was this guy that God called to lead them, to get the oppression and to get to safety, to get the oppression off. Gideon wanted to go to war with an army, and God said, we're doing it different this time, buddy. You're going to take some pictures and you're going to shout and scream and you're going to break some pictures, and it's going to confuse all the people, and they're just going to obliterate themselves, and you're going to win. We're going to win the battle with shouts and pictures? Pottery? Yep. You mean we're not going to use our swords, or we're not going to have blood all over our clothes, slaying people? Nope. This is going to be different. And he says, this light and darkness, this joy that's coming, this burden's rolling off of you. This is going to be like the day of Gideon. We know that all the battles are, they're war. They're loud. They're obnoxious. They're deafening. We know that there's bloody garments at the end of this. Not this time. Take all the accoutrements of war, pile them up, and burn them. Make a bonfire with them. You won't need them. You don't need a tank. You don't need a bomb. You don't need a missile. You don't need a gun. We ain't doing it that way. How are you going to do this? How are you going to release us from the bondage? How are you going to bring joy? How are you going to bring all the light to the darkness? Well, what way are you? How? Next verse, a verse that you may have heard of. For unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. What, you're going to do this with a baby? A communal baby? Unto us a son is given? A baby boy? Yep. What do you mean a baby boy? Well, the government shall be upon his shoulder. His name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. The Mighty God's going to become a baby? Yep. The everlasting one is going to be a baby boy, and somehow a little baby boy is going to be light for darkness and deliver us from the oppression and bring us joy and give us a different way. And instead of the resources inside of us, he's going to give us something. He's going to be our light. Yes. What is he saying? He's saying Jesus is the Christmas light. Jesus is the one who has come. So when Matthew says, yo, remember Isaiah and that he said that there was going to be this light for darkness? I'm telling you, it's Jesus. That's significant. What he is giving to us is an alternate path. What he's giving to us is resources outside of ourselves. What he's giving to us is the fulfillment of the prophecy that all of these people that can't find their own way, that are lost in darkness, and it's getting darker and deeper, and they're spiraling more, and they're frustrated more, and they're fearful more. All of these people have a new way in Jesus. Jesus is the child that was born. He is the mighty God become a son. How beautiful is that? How potent is that? Now here's I think the bottom line of this whole text. And if you miss this, you miss it all. The picture is that the world is broken in many ways, and groping and searching and frustrated and scared. And not just the world. Your world is in many ways broken, and you're searching and you're frustrated and you're scared. But Jesus can fix that stuff. And there's two basic lessons to learn. One is if you don't know Jesus, that you can find joy and burdens can roll off of you in a way that is not the cultural way, but is a way that works if you'll put your faith and your trust in Jesus. But there's also a lesson for those of us who have put our faith and trust in Jesus, but have migrated our hope away from him and have become so fixated on our circumstances or our politicians or even binging whatever Netflix show that it is, that somebody, a prophet in Isaiah, and if I could somehow portray myself as his stand-in this morning, somebody needs to say to you, to the law and to the testimony, back to God. What are you doing? Why are you looking for hope in all those places? You got to go back to him, because even if you know Jesus as your Savior, if you become so fixated on things other than him, it's going to unravel you. And some of us this Christmas season need to understand the beauty of Christmas light and say, you know what? I'm going to focus on that. I dare you. I dare you to read your Bible more than you watch TV for the next month, for the month of December. You say, don't you know how many football games are on? I dare you. See if it doesn't help. Try it and come back to me a month from now and see if you're less worked up and less anxious and a happier person. If you're not, I want to hear about it. I legitimately do. There's a million ways that you could apply this, but you got to go back to him. That's the bottom line. You got to start with him, you got to stay with him, you got to end with him. And if you'll do that, oh my word, there is light for darkness.